beginning. Okay, so welcome everybody, and other people may jump in and join us. This is BDCC's Southern Vermont Economy Project Knowledge Bite series, where we bring you at lunchtime information you can use right away, connections, resources to help you and your projects and your community. So this program, Southern Vermont Economy Project, is supported by a USDA Rural Community Development Initiative grant that's for expanding knowledge and providing training and technical assistance. Specifically for us, it's in Bennington and Windham region across Southern Vermont. So thank you for joining us. This is being recorded. We'll post it at our website. I'll send it out to everybody. And then at that website, you can also find a whole bunch of these. So a lot of them are valuable resources. We try and make them either timely to the moment, but a lot of them are things you could use all the time, of programs that are existing and that you can always take advantage of. So REDI is one of those, and it's a program that can be really useful for community projects that are applying for funding, especially when you're getting into larger sources of funding, larger state grants and federal funding. But I'll let Mariah talk about the program. So I'm going to first turn it over to Mariah Knopf to say hello. And then also she has Diane Meyerhoff here, who is one of the REDI consultants. And she's going to actually just sort of provide us a little bit of like what it looks like when you do get a REDI award, how you use it, what that looks like, how to be ready for it. So Mariah, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, thanks so much, Meg, and thanks to the folks at BDCC for having us. We love coming in on our annual opportunity to chat with you all about the REDI program. So really excited to be here. As Meg said, my name is Mariah Knopf, and I manage the Rural Economic Development Initiative, which we call REDI for short, because more acronyms in Vermont is always a fun game. And I work at the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, which some folks may know as VHCB. So today, as Meg mentioned, we'll dive into an overview of the REDI program and kind of the ins and outs of how the program works, what our process eligibility is for funding for technical assistance through this program. And that'll be followed by some sharing from one of the consultants that we work with really regularly, Diane Meyerhoff of Third Sector Associates. So I'm really excited to have her here to also share a little bit more with you about what that process really looks like on the ground when consultants are working with our clients. And I also just wanted to make a quick note before I dive into the REDI program specifically that the organization I work for, that REDI falls under their umbrella, VHCB, has a variety of other great programs that work in different spheres of community economic development throughout Vermont. So there's an affordable housing division, there's a land conservation, outdoor recreation, and kind of historic preservation division. And then there's also a division called Farm and Forest Viability that works with farm, food, and forest-based businesses on business advising and other types of assistance. So offline, I'm happy to make connections to any of those programs if that would be of interest to anybody in the region, as I know folks are working on a variety of projects all at once. And I see a note from Shane. Do we want to do introductions of the folks who are here on the call before I dive in, Meg, or what works best for folks?
Yeah, sure. Do we want to just do a quick round? That would be fine with me. We're a pretty small group today. So why don't we just go ahead, and those are who are able. I know Julian looks like she's working. So we'll just go around. So Shane, do you want to start that off since you can kick it off?
Sure. I'm Shane O'Keefe. I'm the town administrator in Londonderry, and I just wanted to find out who else we're working with here.
Sure. Mary, want to just introduce yourself? And I see Mike joined as well.
Hi, I'm Mary Wright. I'm a board member for the Southern Vermont Natural History Museum in Marlborough, Vermont.
And I see Michael Clough is here, who's the director, I guess, the program director. What's your title, Mike? Go ahead, just say hi.
It's constantly in flux. I think I'm managing director this week. I'm not sure.
Right. Chief cook and bottle washer, basically. Exactly. And Eric, yes. I see that you're here. You want to just say hi quickly? Hi, Eric.
Hi, everybody. Eric DeRocher, Economic Development Director for the town of Dover, Vermont. Hey, Mike.
And I see Julian Perkins is here from Jamaican Jewels, but you're working, so it's okay. You can say hi.
Yes, hi everyone. Jamaican Jewels here from Jamaican Jewels. Just doing some orders, so I'll be right with you guys.
No worries. You just listen away.
Awesome. Well, great to meet everybody. And yeah, happy to have individual conversations after this webinar as well about the different projects that you folks are working on and how REDI may apply or some of the other resources that we have available. But I will jump into a few slides here that go over the REDI program in more detail. I'm going to move through these a little bit quickly, but I think we'll have time for questions at the end. And like I said, happy to do more kind of one-on-one conversations as well. So I'm just going to pull up my screen here. Everybody see a presentation? Awesome. So we'll dive in here. So what is the REDI program? What do we do? So I'm just going to dive into a little bit of an overview here. So the REDI program was designed recognizing that small communities in Vermont had a variety of really great community-based economic development projects that they were putting together, but really struggling to access some of the more complex, significant funding sources at the federal level. And that's for a variety of reasons, sometimes due to just not having staff capacity, potentially not having knowledge of the programs available, or just not having the time with all of the other demands on folks who work at the town level to be able to access those funds. So the program was really created to really target that particular need to help small communities in Vermont access these dollars and bring them into the state by providing really targeted consulting support and technical assistance to whether to apply to those applications or to accomplish other tasks that would help folks be able to access those funds. So that's really like what we are designed for and what we do best. And so how do we help those small communities access those funds? What we do is we provide funding in the form of small grants to communities and other types of clients that I'll get into in a moment in the next slide here. But we provide these small grants for different types of consulting assistance. So we're not funding, full-time or part-time positions. We're not funding, X construction element of a project, but we are funding really critical consulting to provide that additional capacity to small communities. So consultants that we provide funding for can provide help with identifying funding opportunities and mapping out how best to strategize and use those resources at what time, what funds can match other funds. The core of what we do is this, grant writing support here. So that looks like working with a consultant on developing, narrative or content that's going to go into that application. It can look like offering review and editing support to different aspects of an application, or helping beef up, whether it's the budget portion or a variety of aspects of that grant application, consultants can support with. We can also provide other forms of technical assistance that are critical to accessing a grant application. So that could look like support for architectural renderings, or working with an engineer, or potentially working through, a consultant that does environmental review, as long as those processes are required for the grant that you're applying for. So definitely a range of technical assistance opportunities there. And again, where do we work is these small rural communities, specifically in Vermont. And so we are created by a state statute, which defines what small rural looks like for us. And that is communities that are under 5,000 in population. And we also work with a variety of partners around the state. I think it's a really collaborative group here, and all of the resource providers around Vermont want to support communities to the best of their ability. So I always just like to note, utilizing REDI or utilizing resources through BDCC or another organization is great. Please do that. We want you to work with all of us. It's like if you work with one group doesn't mean you couldn't receive resources from another. So definitely just wanted to note that there. We'll dive a little bit here also into eligibility. So there's a couple different buckets of eligibility, but initially we're looking at what are the focus areas that REDI can fund. So again, this is based in our statute. And there are a few core areas that we work in that a project must fall under one of these categories to be eligible for the technical assistance funding. So the perhaps broadest bucket, and the one that a lot of folks might have projects here that could fall under this category, would be community-based economic development. So that can be a real range of projects, from more harder infrastructure like water and wastewater or broadband, things in that category, to more community-based infrastructure like community centers, childcare centers, co-working spaces, and kind of things in that general element. We can also work on downtown revitalization projects. So an example might be a historic building in your community that needs really significant renovations in order to become something like a community center or an event space or some other community use. That's definitely projects that we've worked on before. And then the other couple categories here are working land sector development. So again, that's where we're working with farm, food, and forest-based businesses to grow and expand their markets or their own business viability there. We can also work with, basically food systems infrastructure businesses that are somewhere in the supply chain, such as, incubator spaces or shared kitchen spaces or aggregation and distribution centers also fall in that category. We also work with outdoor recreation projects, and that can look like trails development. That can also look like downtown pedestrian connectivity, so bike paths, sidewalks, walking trails, and things of that nature. And our other area that we prioritize is folks who are applying specifically for federal funds, as that's kind of what the program was designed around, and projects that are at the implementation stage. So they're looking for funding to actually construct or renovate or do the project. But again, we can work with other types of projects as well, such as those going for state grants or potentially folks that are at a slightly earlier stage in terms of identifying funding at that point. But generally, we prioritize projects in those categories. And second bucket of eligibility requirements in terms of who we can work with. So again, I mentioned that we work with communities of less than 5,000 people, and that project either needs to be based in a community of that population size or primarily serving. So again, folks might have an example where a community resource is based in one town that might have a slightly higher population, but is really serving several towns outside that are under that 5,000 population. And so we could work with that community in that instance. Again, project must align with our focus areas. And then in terms of the eligible clients, again, a range there, but we can work with nonprofits, municipalities, community-based organizations that may not have a specific status aligned to them. And then in terms of private businesses, those folks that we can work with are food producers, farmers, and forest products-based businesses. The other kind of broader eligibility requirement is around demonstrating readiness and readiness to apply for these significant funding sources. And we'll get into that a little bit in the next slide. And then we also require that clients have municipal support or approval. And usually we request a pretty brief letter of support from clients that has the town just is able to say, we support this project. We think it'll advance economic development in our community, and we support them receiving this small grant for technical assistance. Also just want to note here that housing projects and healthcare projects are such a critical part of economic development in all communities and especially in Vermont. However, they are not targeted as priority focus areas for the REDI program. And I'm happy to talk more individually about referring to resources for both of those categories as well, if those are projects that folks are working on. So as I said, diving in a little bit more into how to be ready for the REDI program. And I think Diane can also share some tips and tricks as well. But basically what we're looking for REDI is that projects have hit a stage where it's defined what the project is. So some communities have, maybe 5 to 10 really great projects that they're working to advance. But we're really looking at that time where one of those projects has been elevated and is ready to go after one or more significant sources of funding. So that project is both decided upon and it's fully baked, we like to say. So it's got at least some bounds around it as to what it is, who is involved, who is the community team that's driving that forward. You have a sense of who some of those resource partners might be, who some of those funders might be that you're looking at. So that's a little bit of information there about kind of what type of, how baked the project needs to be before REDI is a good fit. The other piece that's really helpful for us is having a sense, within your project team as what type of assistance is going to be the most helpful for you folks, and having it framed out, are you seeking help with specifically writing a grant? Are you looking at again, support for maybe more of that technical realm of having an architect or engineer do drawings, and how far along are you with deciding which of those things is the most important and where funding might be available for those things. So another important thing we look at is whether folks have connected with other resource support organizations. Like I said, we all want to work together and we all want to provide our resources to the highest and best use for folks. So a lot of my early conversations with communities or other types of clients is, have you connected with X, Y, or Z folks? And then I'm able to, if they haven't, I'm able to put together a resource list for them to make sure that they can get in touch with the 2 to 5 organizations that would be really useful for their project. And then we can reconvene to see whose resources fit best for which items that they need support with. So that's something I love to do and is a huge component of the REDI program as well. And then again, I mentioned that municipal support through the letter of support is something that we request at the time of application. So is required to move forward with getting REDI funding. And like I said, I'm going to buzz through this quickly, so I know it's a lot of information, but just to provide a bit more information on the logistics of the process as to how someone receives a grant and then how they might be connected with a consultant. So basically, the starting point is for folks that are interested in REDI to submit a quick inquiry form on our website that goes straight to me. It's just a couple questions about, main contact, a couple sentences about what the project is, where it's located, and then that goes straight to me, and then we're able to set up a time to have a more in-depth call and conversation to go over your project. Again, go through those items of, where are you currently at with the project? What resources have you connected with? What type of assistance are you looking for? And then I can help folks map out which resource providers they may want to connect with first, or if they're ready to jump right into the REDI program, we can go from there at that point. And so the next step after that, if folks are, ready to dive into to the program and go for a small grant for consulting assistance, we would have folks fill out a quick online application, which usually takes about 10 minutes. It's quite straightforward. And then submit that town letter of support that shares that the town is supportive of whatever the project is and supportive of that team utilizing REDI funding. And then at that point, a community may have identified someone, for instance, especially in the case of where they might be working with an architect or engineer, they might have already identified someone they want to work with, or perhaps there's someone in the community that has grant writing expertise that's super familiar with the project. In most cases, REDI funds can also, pay for their time and we can onboard them through our system. But also many communities come to us that don't have a consultant in mind and who are really seeking support in identifying someone who has the skill sets that they're looking for. And so we maintain a list of qualified consultants all over the state that have a variety of different skill sets, whether it's in particular grant programs or in particular types of technical assistance. And we can help matchmake there as well and pair folks with a consultant who is a good fit for their project. So after that stage, let's say it's an example where the REDI program is identifying someone, we would connect that client with a consultant or maybe 1 to 3 consultants so they can have some initial meetings and see who would be a best fit for their project. And at that point, the consultant and the client will work together and develop what's called a scope of work. So that is basically just a summary of what the services are that consultant is going to provide and how much it's going to cost. And that is what is sent to us for review and approval. So that way, that is basically what our REDI award will cover, is that specific scope and that specific cost. So our cap amount for REDI award is about $7,500. So in most cases, the projects that we fund are within that amount. We do see some scopes of work come in that are that are higher, maybe $10,000 or $15,000, in which case REDI could cover up to $7,500 of that work. We don't require a match, only in those cases where the cost of the work would be larger than our standard award is where the community or the client would need to put in the rest of the funding. And then once basically that scope of work is created, we approve it. We have a direct contract with that consultant. So rather than how other grants might work, where we would grant to a client who then pays the consultant for their work, we just take out some of that, some of the labor there and make a direct contract with the consultant and pay them directly when the work is complete. And then at that point, we do request in terms of reporting, we request copies of anything developed under that funding. So that might look like a grant application or a copy of a report or of some designs or something like that. And that's submitted to us to a confidential file system. And then the project is complete at that point. So we try to keep it as simple as possible for folks. recognizing that they're small grants and we try to move as quickly as we can with them. The program is on a rolling basis as well. So as long as funding is available, eligible projects may apply, and then we create contracts and make those awards on a rolling basis. And then that's the main overview for folks. I know I went through some of that pretty quickly, so I'm happy to take some questions as well. My contact information is here. So if folks want to dive into individual conversations, I'm happy to do that. But I can also pass it over to Diane for some additional thoughts and some additional perspective from her seat, where she is one of the consultants that we might match with a community to go through a REDI project together. So I'll pause there.
Okay, any questions you absolutely need Mariah to answer right this minute? I'm happy if you want to throw them out. So I'll give you a sec to do that, because sometimes you forget them by the end, right? Okay, great.
I was going to say too, you could drop some in the chat too if you have questions you want to write down. You could throw some in the chat and then we can get to them. So that's fine too.
So modern, of course.
Yeah.
Silly me. Yeah,
exactly. Why not? All right, go ahead, Diane. That's great to hear from you. So we just thought it would be fun for you guys to hear kind of from the back end. Did someone have a question? I saw Weechi, you're unmuted. Did you want to ask something or drop it in the chat? Or okay, yeah. Yeah, so just go ahead. We just thought it would be fun to have someone who is a consultant come on to sort of translate from okay, here's the nuts and bolts of how the program works. But sometimes it's really great to just hear from someone like, this is what it looks like. So Diane, talk us through.
Thank you. I don't think I ever have anyone say it would be fun to talk to a consultant. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So Diane Meyerhoff, I'm going to talk a little bit about the work I've done with REDI and grant writing work in general, and then give you some examples of projects that I've worked on with REDI as well. I've been really fortunate to be working with REDI for 5 years. In that time, I've had 10 grant writing clients, and that's nonprofits, municipalities, as well as some farm-related businesses. And we helped them raise about $3.5 million. In general, those funds have been state and federal, so they tend to be the larger grants. I also, I'm sorry, Mariah said she was going to mention that grant writing is a team sport, and you didn't mention it, but I'm going to mention it, so I don't forget to say that this really is a process between me as the consultant and you as the client to learn about your projects, learn about your organizations. It's not something like you just say, oh, here's a bunch of stuff and go away and write the grant. It's definitely an interactive process that we go through. So I wanted to just say that off the top. So basically, my job is to create a compelling and engaging case for your project, right? So to have funders say, wow, I want to do this. That's what I'm always thinking when we're talking about projects. I learn about your organization, obviously, as well as the project. The most successful grant applicants, from what I can tell, are those that have a very clear project description, what they're going to what they want to do. They've thought out the steps of how you're going to implement that project. And, a lot of the ones I do are construction. So the implementation steps are pretty clear, but it doesn't have to be that kind of project. And still to know, though, how is this going to unfold? How much is it going to cost? Obviously, estimated costs are really hard these days to nail down, but estimated costs and a timeline. And it's hard to have a realistic timeline, but we do our best, right? Because we don't know what might happen along the way. And it's funny, when I was listening to Mariah, I realized, I think that's what you were saying, what you call ready, right? Readiness. How do you say it? So the idea that, having those things in place already makes my job a lot easier. But sometimes I do come in earlier, as Mariah knows, and maybe folks aren't quite there. I can help them get there. Or we decide, you know what, we're not really ready yet to do the grant writing phase. Why don't you go back to Mariah and talk to her about getting cost estimates or whatever the other work might be. So hopefully it's great if you're there, but I know that sometimes you just don't have the capacity to get all those things in order before you come and see me or Mariah. What I can bring to this effort is one of the most important things, I think, is an outside perspective of the work. Often clients are so steeped in the work that they have a hard time describing it to folks who don't know anything about your organization, your community, or in some cases, the entire state of Vermont. Think about that, right? Federal grants. I have had federal grant folks say, Are you on the right side or the left side? You know how New Hampshire and Vermont, right and left, they don't know which one's which. So think about that. And here you're trying to describe a project in a small town in Vermont, and they're saying, how many thousand people? So really kind of help you frame it in a way that will make sense to people who really may know very little about the community. That's not always the case, obviously. And obviously some of the federal sources have staff in Vermont, so that's much easier. But they will often say, this is going to go up to a nationwide evaluation. So we have to make sure we're really clear about what we are and where we're coming from. So that's something I can offer. Obviously, know something about the grant world and often have relationships with grant staff here in Vermont, which is really, really helpful. And I know we have some, should we not worry about the chat? You'll yell, Meg, okay, good. All right. So the other thing I do is I help you understand the funder's expectations, because this is a partnership between you and the funder. So what are their expectations and what are the application and submission processes, which now are, most applications are on portals, online portals now. Sometimes that's really great and sometimes it's a horror. So some are better than others. We're making progress, I think, overall on that. And sometimes I help with budget support as well. Certainly help to keep the team on track with deadlines leading up to the submission. Some of my clients hire me, frankly, just to write a timeline and keep them on task. So to get those deadlines met before the actual submission. I spend a lot of time pruning grant applications. Sometimes I'm on the other end and people just say, here, we're 10 pages over. And this, which happened to me recently. And luckily I was one of those people in college who could never stretch my papers long enough to make the paper, the page requirement. So I'm really great at pruning. So if you need pruning, I'm the person to talk to. And basically it's to some extent, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, which of course I love. And when it really comes together at the end, and sometimes it's close to the end and sometimes it's a week before the end, before the deadline, it seems like magic. Honestly, when it all comes together, I think everyone has this really fantastic feeling that they've accomplished something, and hopefully that means they'll get funded as well. So I was going to just mention 3 quick projects. I mean, I'm not too bad on time that I've been working on with REDI. One is up in the Northeast Kingdom. It's the Sanborn Covered Bridge, which is a paddle truss bridge and one of only, I believe, about 10 in the entire United States. It's in pretty rough shape, but the town of Linden is hoping to turn it into a bike pedestrian bridge. And it will hook into the Kingdom Trails, if you're at all familiar with the bike trails up there, which is a very, very extensive network. So through the REDI program, we helped them get a $250,000 grant from the Northern Borders Regional Commission, NBRC. And that's sort of starting what they call the funding stack. But they've been pretty successful in raising a bunch of grants, a bunch of money. And I think they're hopeful in the next couple of years they actually might be able to start the work, which involves, interestingly, taking the entire bridge off the river. They're going to actually do the work on land. And it's going to be something to see. So that's one of them. Down your way, town of Wilmington, I helped them with their Route 9 infrastructure project, which is a wastewater project. And the angle on that, I guess, if you will, is there are 26 underdeveloped properties that by having the infrastructure can be developed, and they're right on the way into Wilmington. And you probably could describe that better than I can. The REDI work, they also got one of those Northern Borders grants, as well as a community recovery grant. That was pandemic ARPA money, so federal money that came to the state. And the total for that that we received was $1.75 million. That was a very big one. And lastly, but not leastly, the Old School Enrichment Council, OSEC, which is also in Wilmington. This is a nonprofit that owns the historic Old School in Wilmington, and they're turning it into a community center with a business incubator, childcare, sports. It's really just it's a great gathering spot for the community. And old building obviously needs a fair amount of work. And I talked to them quite a bit about what funds might be available. And now they've kind of decided they need to figure out a list of all the things that need to get done and get some cost estimates before we can really do a successful application. So they're in the process of doing that right now, and hopefully be able to prioritize the grant opportunities and get ahead to the grant writing. So that one's still underway. So those are my 3 projects that I'm working on or have finished with. And I'm gonna throw this back to Meg, and hopefully we can have some Q&A. Thanks.
Yeah, I would welcome people, if you have questions in general about the program or about projects that you know of in your community. I think this is the time we can talk about it. I know Weechi had a question in the chat, and Mariah answered that. And a lot of times the question is, give us a call, which is what I like. And Mariah can sort of talk through it with you. And then sometimes she may say, first call Meg, or first call Wyndham Regional Planning Commission or Bennington Regional Planning Commission, and see what other sources. And that may be, it's really all of us kind of work together to say, a lot of times what I do with people is say, help them get their project ready. It's kind of like, I'll be in that first line of defense of saying, well, have you done this? Have you worked with that? Have you, just to sort of tell you, and Mariah will do the same if you call Mariah and just sort of say, here's some things that you might want to do first, and then yes, let's get you hooked up. So we're here to say, help you be successful, really. And so sometimes that involves taking a little walk backwards. Sometimes it's like, nope, you're really ready to go forward. It's just a great resource. We're here to sort of wrap around projects and say, here's what might be useful. Does anyone have particular projects in mind they want to ask the question about? You're more than welcome, I think, to do that. Or as we say, you can take it offline and reach out either to myself or directly to Mariah. We'll open up for questions.
Meg, can I just
Yeah,
chime in
go
real
ahead.
quick to go off what you just said? Yeah, I just wanted to know a couple things, and one of the topics that Meg just mentioned in terms of accessing resources in Vermont, there's no wrong door. There's no bad place to start. So even if you're not quite ready for this program that we're talking about today and you have a conversation with me, it could be a month, it could be 6 months, or it could be 2 years later that you are ready. And we're happy to start that conversation at any point and get you connected and do the handoff to the next best resource if it's not a fit right at that moment. And the other thing I just wanted to mention as well, I'm not sure that everyone on the call is in a community that would be REDI eligible or has a specific project that would be REDI eligible. But another resource that we offer is when we speak to folks who may not be a fit for funding through our program, but are still trying to seek, a consultant that would be a really good fit for them. We're happy to share out contacts from our list and happy to try to match make with folks who may have the skill set that you're looking for, even if it might not be something that our funding could cover in that instance. So definitely still be in touch. We're happy to have those resource sharing conversations as well.
I have a
So
project I'd
ahead,
love
yeah.
to discuss. Again, Shane O'Keefe, Town Administrator in Londonderry, and we are very ready on a project. We're about to go out to bid for reconstructions of our town offices. We were lucky enough to pass a $1.3 million bond last year. And we have an architect who has put together plans. And again, we're ready to go out to bid in the next couple of weeks. However, we did some, as we've done a couple of times, brought in a professional estimator, and we're going to be, it's a $1.6 million project. So I have a $300,000 gap to deal with. And while we can throw away some parts of the project, we hate to do that because it's only going to get more expensive in the future, such as solar array on the roof and some lighting and some amenities. So we're ready to go to work on this project in the next 2 months, and so we really need to find additional funds, and that's why I'm hoping to channel those funds and create a funding stack to finish up this project if I could.
Absolutely. And
but timing is a real issue, I imagine, where I know I've done some research on my own into some of the grant funding opportunities, i.e. Accessibility. We're looking to put in a lift, an elevator in the building and do a ramp and things like that. And there is funding for that through a CCD, but the funding, comes around once a year, and we missed that some time ago.
Absolutely. And yeah, thank
open
you,
to
Shane,
anything.
for sharing. Yeah. And I would say in terms of what you've shared so far, I think great fit for REDI funding. I think what would be helpful for me to understand, we can potentially have a more in-depth kind of individual call on this, but would be, is the technical assistance that you're looking for just the funding identification side? Is it looking also at some help with a grant application, or maybe more than one grant application? And so those would just be some of the pieces that we'd want to know, so we could identify, a consultant that would be a fit. But
that's what we would be doing. We'd be looking to identify funding sources, and because basically it's me at the town hall, we would need some assistance on doing the grant applications. I've done plenty of them over time, but there's just too many other. We passed 2 other bonds yesterday for wastewater projects, so there's a lot going on.
It's good news. Okay, good. That's I was wondering if the wastewater project passed. I'm still trying to track down Wilmington too, because they were passing a bond too. That's great.
Wilmington passed.
Both of ours passed.
Oh,
yeah.
good. The bond passed. Okay, great. Good. All right. Wastewater forward in Southern Vermont. We're like big fans of wastewater, because then, that's great. Okay. So that sounds like that might be a good fit. So we'll hang up this call, and Mariah's phone is going to ring. Shane, sounds like you guys should talk. Anyone else have questions or specific projects you're wondering about? Feel free to just unmute and ask, because we're a small group. I know some people have sort of big projects here that are, long range. And sometimes it's great just to have that call to say, well, what should we do next? Because we are going to need a lot of funding, and how do we get to that place where we're ready to apply for it? And that's a great call to have. So anyone else with a specific project? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi,
You gotta work
everyone.
the iPhone.
I had a little rush lunch crowd, so sorry about that. I always wanted to write grant. I don't know what I'm doing, The greatest thing in Vermont is that everybody tell you that they can write a grant, but when the time comes, So now that I have all professionals here, I am working on a project to make sauces. So the project is to get we've bought the property and everything. We need to do like sewage and stuff like that. So is that project sounding like something that I could get a mentor with?
Yeah, I thank you so much for that background, and that's really exciting for you folks. Really exciting to hear about that expansion. And I would say it's a little dependent. I will say identifying grants for private businesses is just much more difficult than for community projects. That's just something to know. It's just like there's just not as many grants that exist for that category versus something that's more of a nonprofit or a municipal project or something like that. But I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you and chat more about your project. And there might be some opportunities out there, especially if you're using local Vermont food products, for instance. So there is a program that comes out annually. It would be over for this year, but it's through the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, and it's called the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative. And I'm happy to send some resources to you on that, but that has a range of grant programs available each year. And so that could be, there's a variety of things that can be funded by those grants for projects that are going to expand the amount of local food production or local food sales. And so that could be a fit. And I'm happy to connect you with the folks at that program to see if that would be eligible. But that would be kind of the major fit in my mind in terms of a potential grant opportunity. But there may also be this is another note that I didn't share in this presentation, but what I like to share with all folks is though grants are, can be really fun and they sound really great. And it's really nice to receive money that you don't have to pay back. I will say a critical piece of the funding stack for nearly all projects is going to be loans. And so there are a variety of low interest loans and really innovative programs in Vermont that do support food and farm-based businesses as well. And in general, most folks will need a line of credit for whatever grant they receive because most grants are on a reimbursement basis. So that's something that's important to know as well. But Julian, let's hop on a call and talk more about your project specifically, and I can get you connected with some folks.
All right.
Great.
Thank you for your
And I was going to say, I can do the same. So we'll double team you with some resources. So
Right.
absolutely.
Awesome. And then I guess just if I'm happy to answer any more questions, but just wanted to circle back on what Diane mentioned as well, because I didn't mention this in my presentation this time, but so important to underscore is that grant writing is a team sport, no matter, you know, how you frame it up, and that you folks in your communities are truly the experts. You're the ones on the ground. You're the ones that are, you know, closest to your business potentially. You're the ones who have all of that information and all of that great story, that when we bring in a consultant, they're just helping to put that story together in the right places that fit for a grant funder, that are going to be most competitive in that application. So just want to note that though it can feel overwhelming, like, you folks do truly have all the key pieces and information, and we're just here to help make that process easier and help you navigate the complexities of it. So just wanted to underscore that too.
So does anyone else have immediate questions? If not, we can, you know, I'll share out right away the recording and the slides, and that has Mariah's contact information in it too, so you can reach right back out. And it's also here in the chat. So I'll share everything with everybody who is on the call, and anyone who registered. We always do that. I just want to put in your head a couple of upcoming dates too. We have some more knowledge bites coming up. So on that are all great resources. So on March 27th, which is in 3 weeks, I believe, we're going to have Jackson Evans from Preservation Trust of Vermont. And he's specifically going to talk about a series of training retreats that they do. So those are really specific opportunities. And again, they're really great resources to dive deeper and do more and learn more. They're learning opportunities. So he's going to talk about what their schedule is. My program is we're putting together, you know, limited time offer to offer some scholarships for people from our region to go up to attend those. They're up at the Lake House in Grand Isle. And so we know it's a big trip to get up there. So we're going to try and help get some people to those with scholarships. So we'll work out the terms and conditions that will apply, but that's worth popping into just to get yourself entered to, you know, if you're interested in those, you'll get entered to win a scholarship. And they're just really great quality workshops that you can attend. And then also, and again, this is for our nonprofit people, on April 10th, we're going to have Martin Hahn from Common Good Vermont on, and their website is just a wealth of resources for nonprofits for a lot of questions you might have asked. So he's basically going to just take you on a guided tour of what kind of resources they offer people to sort of skill up their nonprofit boards and processes. And they do, again, a lot of training too. So if you want to, they have a lot of partner courses, you know, they have grant writing courses and seminars and webinars. So it's like a lot of learning. So again, the next two things that we're doing will be additional learning resources for people in that nonprofit world to help you build your skills. And then REDI is here to help add capacity and bring you skills to your project for a wider variety. So we'll have those coming up, so stay tuned. And then of course, I can't let everybody go without mentioning the Southern Vermont Economy Summit, which is happening on May 21st in Dover. It's a really terrific event, and we'll have a lot of different content for people with different needs, from businesses to nonprofits to municipal leaders. And it's just a huge melting pot of people and resources and skills. The networking opportunities are, I would say, almost as good as the sessions. So that's coming up, and you could sign up for the BDCC newsletter if you're here. You might already get that, and that will have all the information about that. So I think with that, we're at time, and we'll jump off, and I'll share this with everybody. And you can certainly reach out to me directly or to Mariah directly. And Diane, thank you so much for bringing that background into what it looks like in the real world. I think that's always good for people to hear. So thanks very much, people. I'm gonna stop the recording, and then we can people can go about their day. So thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
everyone.